speech and open at the end.
Wave.
Oh, that's the old one?
Yes.
I like that one better.
I do too.
That was good. That's the coin. Hold on, the
Yeah.
cable's
I
not.
hear you.
Yeah, that's good.
We're unmuted though. Yes. you're
Yeah, we're
unmuted.
good.
Feel good? Okay. Tap, tap. Welcome to the, special select board meeting tonight. Thanks for all coming. Want to make, before we start the presentation, I'd like to make an announcement, to take a moment to recognize somebody that we lost a week and a half ago. John Larkin, a longtime, resident of Millis, served on the, permanent building committee for 5 years. He passed away on January 25th. And he began his career as a carpenter and builder. He also had his private pilot's license, was an avid sports fan. I read Patriots first and foremost. He and his wife Amy moved to Millis in 75. They've been here 50 years. And they have 3 grandchildren. He also worked on the DPW buildings, attending many on-site project reviews. Services are going to be held Saturday at Roberts Mitchell in Medfield at 10:30 in the morning. And we just want to thank him for being, from what I understand, a great guy, partner, and volunteer here in Millis. That's that. So we're going to begin tonight with our one agenda item. And it is the presentation of the middle high school building options and the preferred option, et cetera. We're gonna hear from the architect and engineer, Vertex and Tape. We're gonna hear from Bob Mulaney, school superintendent, and maybe from some people from the school building committee, school committee, select board, finance committee's here. Everybody's involved. I love to see this many people here. I think it's fabulous. And we're going to begin now. Who's coming up?
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm Rich Nichols. I'm the chair of the school building committee. So along with our team, the town of Millis was accepted into the building program and started the process of deciding upon a school option with the help of our manager and architect who are here tonight. The MSBA who helped fund the project, specific requirements of options that must be explored in this phase. They require certain options to be brought forwards to be explored. That's part of their process of how they do that. The three options that are explored were a simple code renovation, where they go in and they upgrade all the systems, don't really do anything to the building other than fix it up. The next option would be an addition renovation option, which would be where they would add space to the building. They'd also fix up all the parts that needed to be fixed. And then the final option is the new school option. We went through and did initial pricing, and when the first round of pricing came in early spring last year, the committee decided to do a deeper dive into the options because of the numbers that came back. We wanted to confirm that all viable options were explored. We went back in and explored different ways to do the renovation. We explored different options on the different renovation options, ad reno options. The new school, we kept in there because we have to have that as a baseline, but cost prohibitive because they came up with things that the MSBA would not reimburse us for. So we basically have to put the new school on top of the fields. They would not necessarily reimburse us for that. And so that became problematic. So, anyhow, those were the multiple options that had gone into the decision. So we came back after the summer and went through the options again and came up with the choice that we made, which will be presented tonight. So I'll pass on to Jeff next.
So I'm going to talk about the agenda. Thank you to the boards and the boards in the audience as well for giving us an opportunity to talk about the project. As Rich alluded to, it's been a long journey to get to this point. The MSBA has a regimented process with three legs of a stool, so three major submissions. The first went in, we're about a year and a half into the process, those following along at home. Back in the spring of last year, we submitted that first package, and so that had a short list of options. As Rich alluded to, there were multiple versions with ad renos, new construction, and renovations, pure renovations themselves. Over the course of the summer and the fall, the building committee looked at multiple options, really trying to understand what the difference was at each stage of the process and finding more and more complex options and then simple options and evaluating all the pros and cons to it. To get to this point, it really needs to rely on the educational program, and Bob's going to talk to you about that tonight. Before you get to that portion, you really need to understand the why, the need for the project. And so Chris will do a little overview of the building deficiencies, and then Chris will walk you through the design study options. Bob will then pick back about the educational program. And then myself and Mike will talk to you about cost and evaluation. I'll let Chris take it from here.
Thanks, Joe. So as part of the MSBA's process, we do a pretty thorough job of evaluating the building. We went through and had the building laser scanned so we could get accuracy up to 1/8 of an inch on exactly what's going on inside the building. We bring in engineers to study all of the systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection, data, all of the things. We look at the site as a whole in terms of civil and stormwater. And the slide we're showing here is kind of a representative baseline. All the reports are available on the project website to review in more depth because they are very lengthy. But this slide is showing the sort of current layout of the building, and the red blocks are classrooms that do not meet sort of state standards in terms of size and space that accommodate the education of the building. education that goes on within the building. And that becomes, you'll hear us refer to that as a baseline through the process, because when we went back and did a more in-depth look at the various parts of the building, it kind of all boils down to a safety factor relative to what's going on in these rooms educationally, but then also more importantly on the science lab side, how do we do science in a safe way using today's standards on that in that regard. So that's one aspect that we look at the building is through a programmatic lens, which is what's on the screen right now. And then all of the engineering data reports that highlight deficiencies like the roof needs replacement. There's walls that leak and windows that leak, and there's issues with water penetration. We have some videos on the website about that showing, when it rains, you get to see that outside and inside the building. Here, the superintendent's office has some bees in it that we were having to work around one time.
That's an extra, Bob. The bees are an extra.
Keeps him on his toes.
And
Did you find mold?
our initial investigation didn't come across any reportable levels of mold, but we also didn't.
Test for it.
No, you do airborne testing, and we didn't find any airborne testing, but that doesn't mean it's not behind a wall that we didn't open up.
Okay.
And so I can't, it's one of those I can't confirm or deny that there's mold in the building, but it's something we would chase with more vigor once we get into an actual approved project. But the systems are all pretty much near the end of their, term we use is near the end of their useful life. Doesn't mean they won't continue to function for you. Some things you can't find parts for. Some things you have to work very hard to find parts for. But you can piecemeal things together and kind of band-aid it moving forward. But that's so part of the options we looked at was a 10-year maintenance plan to fix all the things that might be coming to the end of their life. And that was looked at as well for this project. And so the design options that we ended up with for the for the preferred schematic report phase were base renovation, which is essentially, Rich had already said it, it's just, that's the R1 where we just basically do a code only upgrade. There's really no other facets to that. There was an R2 and an R3, which went various steps further on that. So layering into that a systems upgrade, and then R3 layering into that some modest programmatic upgrades to address some safety issues. But again, no major alterations to the building. And then the next row are the ARs. It just stands for ad reno. We had a total of, I think, 6 different versions. Maybe it's, 7 by the time you get through the 4As and 4Bs and stuff like that. But we ended up looking very heavily at AR5, AR6, and AR4A. And then we had a new option. We actually had more new options than this in PDP, but we boiled it down to the one new option. And the caveat here is that the MSBA at the end of PDP.
What's PDP?
PSR, which is preferred report. Thank you for reminding me of these acronyms that I use. So, so at the end of that, they require us to sort of declare the 3 final options, and it has to be one of each category: renovation, ad reno, and new. And so they do that so that you can carry a baseline of costs associated with each of the various options, even though you may know early on that one is not feasible for various reasons. And that was in one, was that for this project that we just kept carrying it forward for analysis purposes and to comply with MSBA policy.
I'll jump into just to anchor the study itself. One of the things that the project is based on is need, right? So before you hired any of the consultants, the school department submitted a needs application. And some of the deficiencies they noted were class sizes, right? So the rooms themselves, science facilities, overall enrollment growth. There's a growth of enrollment in town, deficiencies in the size of gymnasiums and the science rooms. And so those are some of the core deficiencies. And so as part of this overall solution, the MSBA wants to see how you're addressing each of those needs. And so the ladder of options here start to climb up there and look at the various options. So as Chris kind of leads you through that, as you start the lower end of, with the initial renovations, R1, R2, you're not meeting those needs. R3, you're starting to address some of the needs, and then with the add renos, you address various components of the needs. And certainly in an all new, it's a blank canvas, you're hitting all.
So if you don't address the needs, are they going to fund us?
So you need to justify,
Why you're not?
yeah, why you're not justifying the needs, but that does tie to the funding. They would pick and choose what they could fund or not fund if you're not meeting the definition of the program. So it needs to meet both their program and your needs to be a successful partnership to move forward with funding. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the funding slides towards the end. I'll let Chris walk through the options.
So as just alluding to, this diagram kind of shows the range of program changes. So when talking about program changes, we're meaning how the existing building is laid out for school, for the operations of school. And within that, how the various programs from, class, science, whatever the grade level subject matter is, how that's distributed out through the building. And so on the left-hand side of this, you see that the renovation schemes really have almost no change programmatically, which is why you start with the code-only renovation. And then as you go through R2, R3, you're starting to pick up more program changes. And then you can see AR5 and AR6 actually had, in our estimation, fewer program changes than AR4A that allowed for kind of the most program change without going all out new, which is a brand new building and you can kind of build it the way you want from there. And so this was just a diagram to show you how each of these options ranked within comparative to each other in terms of program changes.
Can you just for a moment, just to avoid confusion, explain what STEAM is? There's going to be people talking about STEAM and not understand what we're talking about.
Sure. So STEAM is an acronym, and it's science, technology, engineering, art, and math, and it's a sort of catchphrase for it's an emerging section of instruction within schools that really hits on that intersection of all of those things combined. And so it's in the old days, you might have had reading, writing, and arithmetic all in their own little silo component. And now industry and everything that we're seeing research wise in education wants to kind of bring those together as best we can, but they still need their own distinct markers. And so the STEAM component is the intersection of a lot of different things that kind of mesh together to blend the program of a high school and middle school successfully.
And we built the Clyde Brown. We did build a space for that in the elementary school.
Yeah, one right on the second floor.
Yeah.
It's not being used, but it's there.
There's some different conversations there, but so cutting to the chase here, the AR4A option is the one that the building committee had selected as their preferred option. Looking in detail here at the floor plans, you can see that the left-hand side is the first floor, the right-hand side is the second floor. The biggest change here is that currently you have the sandwich model, which is the high school's on the first floor primarily and then spills over to the second floor. And then the middle school's up on the second floor. And so you don't necessarily have distinct schools separate from each other, but sharing facilities. And that's one of the hallmarks of a middle high school is that you have the ability to have distinct schools that share the core facilities, the big facilities that they can. And so one of the big wins on this option is that you actually achieve that at the same time that you can renovate all of the spaces to be accommodate the 21st century educational goals that Bob's going to talk to you about in a second. And then the other big win here is that on the south side of the site here, this is the addition in the pink area, and you'll see that clearly on the site plan in just a second. This allows us to build a new addition to house students and essentially build in the swing space that allows us to do the renovation of the existing building.
Without disruption.
Yeah. And so you can build this section first, then you can move students into it. renovate this section and then move the students into that. And then the final step would be to tear down and restore the site how you want to do it. But that saves the town money, frankly, because you don't have to spend money on modulars that are just, once they leave town, that's the money leaving town within modulars. And so this is a built-in swing space model that allows you to do school and construction at the same time, even though those are really not inherently symbiotic relationships. You got to work hard at the safety and the mechanism of this. This option affords that to the district and the town.
And when you talk about modular spaces, you're talking about basically trailers that would be
Trailers,
used for
right?
classrooms while you're doing construction, and there's none of that with this.
Yeah, it's trailers, and as Bob's reminding me to mention is that the MSBA doesn't cover, they exclude the cost of modulars, which is quite expensive. On Jeff and I both have projects, and it's an astounding cost when you see it, so this way it's dollars focused in the place that has the most impact, it's permanent for you. That was a big win on this option. Here's the site plan. The caveat here is that these are somewhat still in progress. So the next phase would be schematic design, and we would look a lot more at the details of all of this and zoom in various parts. But the idea is that the site would continue to operate much like it does today, entering from Plain Street, coming in. All traffic would come on the road between Clyde Brown and the high school. And then right here, you can see a little bus loop. And so buses would peel off, it becomes 2 lanes right back here. Every lane, they peel off and drop off on this part of the building, but cars would continue around the side. And then have a drop off here that allows you to drop off students at a middle school wing and a high school wing. And so 2 separate entrances, but also married in the middle. So this is really the sort of, it's a good solid plan for middle high school, because you can have this drop off that allows for the students to go where they need to go, but also have their own unique and distinct identities. And then pass through traffic can keep going, and then all the cars join back up and loop back out the way they currently do on site. So that's a good win on the site plan, I think. Kind of keeps things the way you know it now. One of the other AR options was an addition of a science wing. And so we weren't able, when we actually went through the building and made science rooms the size that they needed to be to meet safety standards for the MSBA's policy, you ended up having to combine a couple of rooms here and there. So we lost physical rooms within the existing building. And so we needed to do some form of an addition that added science and then also addressed the STEM and STEAM component that I mentioned earlier. That was also in the SOI statement of interest that you submitted to the state, which was the needs-based assessment that got you into the program. And so we were looking at the option here that added a science wing, or science pod, I should say, which includes STEM and STEAM focus and all around a science bit here. The downside to this, and Bob goes into more detail on these a little bit later, but the downside is that all students are kind of mixing in this one zone, and it doesn't do anything for this middle high school component that we talked about that 4A does. But this was one option where it's a much less, a much smaller addition at about 15,000 square feet or so. Addressing just really the science programs, nothing else really, because you can see we're not really doing anything else inside the building. This site plan, really the site would kind of be the way it is today. There's a parking lot where this addition would have been proposed to build, and then you kind of sneak into the grass area outside the parking lot behind the gyms. But no major changes to flow or parking on this. I think, might be a small decrease of about 3 spots or something at the end of the day, but, we can probably work on that and find them at the end of the day. But this is the site plan for AR5. AR6 was also trying to address many of the similar problems with science, because that was a big deficiency in the statement of interest. And so we looked at the idea of building just a new gym which gyms oftentimes can be a smaller square foot for dollars per square foot because it's just a big open box with a bunch of, like, it doesn't have as many broken up systems and things like that. And then you use the space that you vacate at the existing gym to create new science labs and STEAM there. But again, the rest of the building kind of stays as is. The programs aren't changed. The flow and operations of the school, middle, high school don't change at all. And so this one, Bob will give you the educational reasons why it was sort of not seen as favorable, but that was the basis of the option, was to say, what if we could build a gym and address some of the gym issues at the same time as addressing some of the key programmatic issues of science and STEAM. This site plan looks much like you have today. We were able to add a bit more parking out on the back because we're not putting a building there, but you also have some green space where we can do that. So looks like this one might be an add of around 20 spots or so. Yeah, there. And then the new option here was putting a new building. You can see the pink and blue is separate middle school, high school, but putting that out on the fields. And then the big issue with this is that you're without fields for probably 2+ years. Then you got to tear down the existing building, and then you got to rebuild fields and parking, and all of that cost adds up pretty quick. And you have caps at the MSBA that most of that would end up probably being ineligible or capped out. And so that's additional cost to you that you don't need to incur just to put a building here on the field. So, so that was one of the reasons why this one was kind of brought off the table. And this would be a site plan potentially that that would emerge from the new options, new option one. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bob and he'll talk you through some of the education.
Thanks. And just a little bit on our educational plan. It was a plan designed by the school administration, and it was informed by an educational visioning group we worked with last spring. We had a 35-member group that included parents, community members, educators, met with a design consultant and educational consultant provided by TAP-A, where we looked at school vision, district core values and beliefs, and the important elements of educating a student in 2025. And we developed this educational plan, and using that plan, some of the important features of.
Just 1 second. I've been hearing a lot about this educational plan. Is that a requirement?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
can you
it is
explain that a little?
So, yeah, so as part of the MSBA process, Jeff mentioned earlier, we needed a statement of interest that explained our needs. We provided that statement of interest that got us into the program.
Okay,
You may remember that was the one where Millis was described as one of the neediest and most urgent projects in the state, which is how we got in.
by the state
By
said-
the MS.
MS, which is them. Good.
And then as.
So see, we are number one. We think we don't hit the marks here, but every now and then,
Right, and then so once you're number one,
yeah,
you have to really expand on what is your vision of education? What purpose is this building gonna serve? What features does it have to have? How is this building going to help your students be educated? And just as an aside, when I was principal at the high school, I'd go to principal meetings and go to Medway, and I'd go to Ashland, and I'd go to Hopkinton, and they'd have these beautiful school buildings. And I'd drive home, and my mantra was, a school is more than a building. A school is more than a building, and that got me through it. However, a building can do so much to help students in a school, and that's where we are at. And so when we look at these design options and our educational plan is what our kids are gonna need. They're gonna need, Chris mentioned STEAM space, math, engineering, arts. that's, learning in those spaces is different than sitting in rows. It's prototyping, it's designing things, it's testing things out, it's doing experiments and lab work. And the traditional classroom isn't always the best fit. So, you know, we want a building that has some flexible spaces, some small group spaces where kids can work in small groups on projects. It's larger areas where classes can be combined together to work on interdisciplinary projects. So all these were features in our educational plan. And so.
And that gets submitted
Yes,
to
I'm
the
sorry.
MSBA?
That gets submitted to the MSBA as part of this, so they will
Okay.
look at these design
And
options.
did they comment? I mean, or they just accept it?
Yeah, they comment heavily. So an educational plan is essentially, think of it as a
You
written.
need to talk, so.
The educational plan, you can think of it as a written narrative of how education is delivered in Millis. And so it's two parts. It's
How it is
broken down-
delivered, how we want it to be.
It's first broken down to how it's delivered today. You have to justify the baseline, right? So you're not just reaching for the stars, right? They want to understand that what are your existing programs? How do they run? How do they function? And how would you do that in your future building? How do you get from A to B? And so you need to articulate in words that narrative, of how education gets delivered today in the current building and tomorrow in the program. That educational narrative needs to tie into the ultimate design plans, right? And so the MSBA needs to see it both in a written narrative as well as floor plans to make sure they line up. They heavily comment. When we submit for the next submission, we'll have a meeting just dedicated to talking about the educational program. It's the Facilities Assessment Subcommittee, where they have people on the board that will push back, they'll challenge, they'll validate the program. We'll go back and re-edit that and revise as necessary and submit it back to the MSBA. So there's a few rounds of revisions that go through it.
Okay.
It's not just accepted as it gets submitted.
Okay. Good.
As another marker of Millis being number one,
Well,
when you did the Clyde Brown, actually, you did the same process and you had an educational plan written up for that started same process. There's members of the MSBA's board and facilities assessment committee that actually commended very heavily the work that was done on that education plan for the Clyde Brown School and recommended that other schools in the state refer to that as a basis for how to write educational plans for elementary schools. And so what we're trying to do is, continue that trend from the elementary school up to the high school using that same basis. And the MSBA has looked at your educational plan and knows that process. So I just wanted to
Okay.
tell you started off well with the Clyde Brown and now you have it fixed.
And I can take no credit. And also the educational plan is available on the project website. So people who are interested can go and see. And as Jeff and Chris described, it talks about our current reality and our changes and other proposals of what we'd like to see happening in our classroom. So we take all that and then we look at the various designs that Chris went through. So just currently, Chris showed that graphic earlier that showed the building and all the red areas and so on and so forth. Well, currently, again, the left is the first floor, the right is the second floor. All of these classrooms that have yellow have current classes that exceed the square footage per student that the MSBA is part of the MSBA guidelines. So you can see a large number of our classrooms are currently overcrowded. And so, when we looked at those renovation options, outside of, the options that increase the size of some science classrooms and, R3 replace some gym bleachers, they really don't address all those yellow areas that we have now.
but to be fair, the school police don't come in and shut you down because we're not compliant.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. I would also say, and I go into classrooms often, some of these classrooms are very crowded and it makes it more difficult to teach and more difficult to learn.
Okay, but
Right,
nobody's gonna shut us down. But moving forward, you need to address it, I'm assuming. Okay,
So you know, the renovations options don't address it. And that's a concern because, you know, we're projecting.
If the renovation options don't address it, will they contribute? Will the state contribute to it?
That's the future slide with funding.
Okay, sorry.
You're trying to jump way too far ahead. There's a process.
Can't spoil.
Yeah, bills.
So, you know, and although the changes that the renovation options would make in our infrastructure, in our safety systems, in our electrical system, roofs, all that desperately needed,
Yes,
but they do nothing for the education. They don't change the way we program our classrooms to run. So as an administrative team, you know, we dismiss those as not addressing educational plan. Then we looked at, as a school administration, the addition and renovation options, AR5, AR6, and then AR4A. And as Chris mentioned, AR5 adds this kind of STEAM wing or appendage behind the gym, and increases the size of some science classrooms. So it's certainly a step up from the renovation options. What it does for us, or what it would do for us, it would increase the size of some science classrooms, and as Chris mentioned, you know, that's a safety factor, so that's a good thing. It does create a multi-use STEAM wing that could be used for project-based learning, for interdisciplinary learning, for design learning, prototyping, testing, things like that. So it creates that space, which is very important in 21st century learning. And that space would also, you know, maybe allow some flexibility in classrooms in that space and storage in that space. What it wouldn't do is it wouldn't create two distinct schools, a middle school and a high school. And just to speak about that for a quick minute, we feel very strongly that each of those schools should have its own unique culture and philosophy, because a middle school is not a junior high school. A middle school philosophy is not only dealing with academics, but it's dealing with the social emotional learning of the student. You know, developmentally, there's a lot that happens in middle schools. I'm sure you remember from that age. And the middle school philosophy is based on all of those things, not just academics. A high school philosophy is more academic oriented. And so a middle school is designed in grade level teams. And the high school is designed for more to be set up in disciplines. So you have all like a science wing and an English wing. And so we think it's very important that we create those two distinct cultures and schools under one roof, sharing common spaces. It also continues to say this does not solve the problem of undersized classrooms. Those yellow areas that were in yellow on the original slide I showed will still be yellow. It doesn't create the collaborative space. In the general classroom area, the STEAM wing has it, but the rest of the classrooms would not. We would still have undersized special education spaces. English learner spaces would still be undersized. It would provide no upgrades to our music or unified art spaces. We'd still have a gym that's too small, and we wouldn't, you know, we still can't provide, we don't provide a space for adaptive PE. And adaptive phys ed is for students with special needs who may have some physical needs, where every kid needs physical education, but some of the activities in a traditional physical education class are not appropriate for some students who have needs. So, we have adaptive PE. Right now, our adaptive PE takes place, well, we might have some kids working on the stage, in the cafeteria. It's basically wherever we can find some space, and it's really not appropriate. So this AR5 doesn't address that. And it really doesn't create a community feel for the building. It's kind of like we just putting an appendage on, calling it the STEAM wing. And so it's 135,900 square feet. So again, the overcrowding is still an issue. It would require those modular classrooms that the MSBA doesn't cover as part of the process. The storage space for projects and things like that would still be a problem in most of our classrooms. And it doesn't support that middle school notion of neighborhoods that have classrooms, student support, breakout planning spaces, all in adjacent areas, like connectedness. We looked at AR6, and again, this is the option that creates a new gym and then takes the old gym space and repurposes it as a STEAM area, and fixes some of our science classrooms. Once again, we get an increase in size of some of our science classrooms, certainly a plus. We get an appropriate size gymnasium that, teams often make the tournament, and if they advance into the later rounds of the tournament, we have to have home games over at Medway or Medfield because our gym's too small. This would give us an appropriate sized gym. It repurposes the old gym as a STEAM space, which would have the appropriate storage. Again, the MIA tournament can host late round tournament games. What AR6 does not give us is, again, the distinct middle and high school areas. Still have the undersized classrooms, still have a lack of collaborative space in the general classrooms outside of the new areas. Undersized special ed, undersized EL, no upgrades to music or UA. Still have a need for the adaptive PE space under this option. Again, undersized, need for the modular classrooms. And again, we didn't see this as a long-term solution addressing the needs for 21st century.
Bob, you say the gym is too small. The gym itself or for people?
Both the capacity and the gym itself. In terms of the
Did they
MIA.
change the size of courts and things? What am I missing?
Well, there are courts that are larger, and it's not just, the gym, not just for the basketball game, but sometimes there are 3 classes in the gymnasium at once. It's too crowded.
Yeah.
We have kids that have to go and work out in the undersized weight room for that period because it's just too crowded. And then, the capacity for sporting events after school and things, the bleachers aren't big enough. And so, again, we need the modular classrooms, doesn't promote that middle school idea of neighborhoods, doesn't provide embedded areas for English learners and special education students. And again, we didn't see this as something that was a long-term solution. So then we get to AR4A that Chris just showed, new gymnasium, new middle school wing, redesign of the existing high school classrooms. And we felt this best fit the educational program. It created 2 distinct schools with a common space at the center. At the middle school, it allows for the learning neighborhoods based on grade level teams. It provides opportunities for appropriate supervision of spaces as we give middle school students that gradual release of responsibility, but you can still keep an eye on them. Special education and English learner classes are part of, they're not just stuck in different areas where we have little rooms. They're thoughtfully part of the design of the facility. It would give students options for small group working, quiet areas, larger group working, flexible class spaces. It would create a situation where we would have a right-sized gymnasium and we would have space for adaptive PE. And at the high school level, again, flexible learning, we could be organized by departments. Gym would be right-sized. Like the middle school, small group learning spaces adjacent to classroom learning areas. If you walk down the high school at any period of any day, you'll see kids working in the hallways, sitting on the floor, back up against the locker with their computer, and they're working. It's not optimal. If someone comes by, they have to jump over them, or, their friend comes by and they trip on them on purpose. This new facility would remove that. The space in between classes would be planned out where they could be sitting at a table and working and collaborating with another student. The classroom layout would better support interdisciplinary learning, give us some space to showcase student work. Again, we wouldn't need modulars for this, as Chris and Jeff showed. Once the new wing was built, we could rotate students into that new wing as we repair and renovate the older sections of the building. And there'd be storage in every classroom for those types of projects and team deliverables that the kids have been working on. So as an administrative team, we came to the conclusion that AR4 was the appropriate option for this facility, this updated facility. We felt that it was the only option aside from a new facility that would meet the current and future educational needs of our Millis students. It addresses the overcrowding and creates a facility that supports the type of learning kids need to have in the 21st century. And we really strongly believe that this is the type of learning environment that the kids in Millis need and deserve. And that was our conclusion of that.
You have any questions right now? That was good, Bob.
The only thing I want to say is you kept mentioning modulars. I don't know if everybody understands how important that is. A modular classroom is money we spend and then just throw away, and the state won't reimburse us a dime for it. So it's a huge waste of money to have to use any modular classrooms. And AR4A does not, and that AR4A does not. That's one of the reasons why it is, when we get to the cost, why it's a lot more affordable than some of the other ones might, as far as value and affordability.
Is which is the one, AR4A?
AR4A.
AR, too many A's.
Yeah.
AR4A, is that the only one other than new that addresses the space issue?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fully.
Yeah, exactly. There are some science classes.
No,
and they have
full-
five.
Fully, it solves the
Right,
problem.
the gym
Yeah.
class.
So I was waiting for the whatever, but I didn't hear it. So if you don't address the space issue fully, will the MSBA contribute to any of
Still
these?
one more
Oh,
set of
fun.
slides. I'm sorry.
All right,
But wait for the last set of slides.
and not for nothing, Bob, not for nothing, Bob, I was one of those people that was leaning up against lockers in the halls, and the building was brand new, by the way.
Yeah.
With a book, because, there were no computers back then.
Yeah.
So the hallways have always been full. I think we preferred that at that age for some reason, so you'd have to
Yeah,
jump.
you're gonna
over
get a
it.
great set of slides on costs. I'm certain. Okay.
Yeah, the basic cost program. And so, we've asked that question many times to the MSBA over the past year. And they always come back with the same kind of stock answer is that we'll participate in a pure renovation. But it's gotta meet your program and it's gotta meet all these things. And so they don't give you full guidelines until you choose your option and submit.
Okay,
Right, and so, I did get them to write back to me and say that, we're looking at this ladder of renovation options, the 10-year capital plan, the renovation 2, the renovation 3 that starts to address the science rooms. And they said it's hard to communicate what will be acceptable without fully understanding all of the educational benefits and maintaining the existing spaces for both your middle and high school. But we remain open to participate in a code repair or pure renovation project. You'll need to demonstrate how you utilize your science rooms, how you can deliver your intended schedule with your proposed enrollment growth. And ultimately need to make sure that you meet the statement of interest, which is why you were invited into the program. So all along, they say, you come up with a solution that works for you, submit it back to us, we'll run it to ground, and then we'll let you know what we can and can't participate in. Ultimately, your existing rooms that deliver science today are in some cases, 800 square feet, right? And their guideline for a science room is 1,400. Just to put that into perspective, some of your classrooms are certainly closer to that. You have 1,100 and sometimes close to 1,200 of your biggest classrooms in the building. But none of your classrooms are anywhere near the 1,400 in totality. There's about a half a dozen that are in that 1,000, 1,100 square foot range that are close. And that's where you deliver science today.
And I think that's something that we have to understand about this process. This isn't we submit them all, the state tells us how much they're gonna pay for
for
it,
each.
for each. We're required tonight, the only thing that's happening tonight is we're gonna vote to endorse or not endorse, the plan that the, school building committee, get the right title, school building committee brought forward. That's signed, that's sent to the state, then the state fills in all the blanks. It tells exactly how much they're gonna reimburse us. We continue design, we continue working on it. So this isn't a throw everything at the wall and see what the state will fund. We have to make some educated guesses. And the state is never going to say, no, we're not gonna fund, but that was really close to saying, no, we're not gonna fund it. If you,
Well,
yeah. I mean, it's a polite way of saying, you show me how an 800 square foot science lab meets the needs for a 1,400 foot science lab.
Because they say you
Yeah.
can get there if you make all your classrooms smaller.
Yeah.
But if currently if you have 24 kids in a classroom and to get to the safety factor, you're down to like 16. So now you need 2 more classrooms.
Mhm.
So therefore you're into the addition anyway. So it's a kind of circular reference in that regard that you got to deliver the space for the students if they're working with, open flames or chemicals and things like that. They need to have proper protections.
Yeah, and we've put about $1 million into this study, a little bit over that so far. This was voted at a town meeting 2 years ago, ish. And so this is the culmination of all that work. We've had volunteers working on this who are taxpayers in Millis, citizens of Millis that are working to bring the best solution forward. They've investigated this unbelievably. The number of options they went through, I think they presented 7 tonight, but
There were more.
there were dozens of options. There were permutations of permutations. There were a lot of choices, and they've looked at cost on all of those. But I'll let you continue now that we're segueing into price.
Yeah, so
probably.
we'll talk about costs and then Michael Cohen will talk about the conclusion to the options and then open up the questions. So the MSBA program goes through 3 types of cost caps. So there's things that are categorically ineligible, so that they don't meet the core educational program and they won't participate in them. I'll cover those quickly. And then there's costs that exceed their caps. And then there's things that are ineligible space or may exceed program. In some other towns, you may choose to build a gym much larger than the MSBA program. And, they participated up to a certain size and beyond that, as an example, we go to the next level. So things that are applicable to the Millis project that are ineligible, your legal fees, any offsite improvements, that includes athletic fields that are offsite, turf fields. So, with that new construction option, any turf field, any stadium costs, those are all ineligible. Any utility back charges, the swing space and modular costs would be ineligible. Any local permitting fees or board fees, any borrowing costs, and in your case, the district administration space, they don't participate in that as well. And so those are the items on this list that are applicable to Millis.
And we voted to waive all building fees for all municipal projects. So there will be, just for anybody out there saying, well, they're charging building fees themselves. We're not. We voted to waive those for all municipal projects. It just doesn't make sense to charge the town.
To charge ourselves.
Right, and that's, the MSBA
Yeah.
does that too, which is why they put that language in there
Yeah.
to keep costs down
Yeah.
overall, right? This slide here is a recap of the MSBA's program as in 2024 as to how they reimburse projects. Essentially soft costs that exceed 20% of the value of the construction cost. Now, soft costs, for those following at home, are the total project cost. So you have your hard costs, which is your construction number for the bid to actually build the job. Soft costs are all your other things such as contingency, your furniture costs, your equipment costs, your consultant fees, exploratory costs, anything that does not fit within the overall cost to build the building. OPM fees that, and so that's your owner's project management, that exceed 3.5%. And architect fees that exceed 10%. That used to be capped out at, or was capped out at $550 a square foot. The building costs they've upgraded over the course of time, and so it was capped back in 2023 at $550 a square foot. And the site work cost was capped at $55 a square foot, roughly 10%. Those had been much lower back when you did Clyde Brown. They had really kept it low artificially, much longer than the market had escalated. And so they started 2 years ago to catch back up. And so fortunately for this project, they made another vote. It was effective this month. And so as of this month, two of those line items have gone up. And so the building costs and the site work costs have gone up, total of $40 a square foot more. So as of January this year, you'll be eligible for an additional $40 per square foot of the building of eligibility costs. So that's great news to the overall reimbursement to the project. This slide is where I always have to stress the MSBA process is not straight math. Everybody at home always wants to think about just taking 53% and multiplying it across. That's not how it works. You first have to calculate all the ineligible costs that we talked about on the previous slide, any things that exceed the MSBA cap. And then you take your baseline cost of that $586 a square foot times the size of the building, then multiply that by the 53.3. And so that 53.53 is your socioeconomic Millis specific multiplier. That's your starting point. From there, you can get incentive points for energy and efficiency. Now, that used to be 2% under the, when you previously did it with Clyde Brown. During that time, it was a LEED certificate was all you needed. They moved the goalpost a year ago, or a year and a half ago, to 3 to 4%. But it essentially pushes projects to be all electric or all geothermal, which has significant upfront costs.
Yeah.
Currently, the building committee is not considering pursuing those, which is why we're not showing capturing that 0% this time. But to build geothermal wells, you're talking about millions of dollars to support a building.
Tens of millions of dollars.
They also rate you on your how you maintain your building, 0 to 2%. Clyde Brown, you are 1.38, so I'll plug that into the multiplier. You do get bonus points for the renovation. So, you know, I targeted 2% for the cost exercise we're talking about here, but it does vary, right? Because the various ad renovation options, you're touching different elements of the building. And if you're fully renovating it, you're kind of using more of that renovation. If you're lightly touching it, that's still up to the MSBA's discretion as to how much of that potential 5% you could get back. And then you're not in an overlay district. So essentially the 53.5% could grow to 56.5 to potentially 58% by the time we hear everything back from the MSBA and you finalize your program. But that's not the effective rate. You have to go through, take out the caps, take out the exclusions, take the 586 a square foot, and then multiply it down. So it ends up being in the, you know, the high 30s to low 40%, which is very good compared to other projects within the pipeline today. Other jobs that are going net zero or end up in the low 30% because they're covering the cost of those geothermal wells. There were a lot of rebates available up until the current federal administration. That seems to be on hold as of some executive orders. So some other towns made decisions based on geothermal future reimbursements that may or may not be coming true now. And so that's just something that we're dealing with in real time in this town and others.
Yeah, you mentioned the 53.53 is based on our current socioeconomic rating by the state.
Correct.
We just, and is that set right now for this project? Because we were just informed that our Millis has crossed a threshold into a
Yes.
wealthy community. We went up 33%, Jody was saying. I don't know what the factor was.
Yeah, it's increased based on the new
Yeah.
construction and
Yeah.
people moving into it.
Well, congrats if that 53 doesn't get affected, but I think in future applications, it could
It
come
can
down.
get affected this year, so doesn't get locked in until you submit for your final schematic design.
Yeah.
Which we're targeting the, end of August this year. That's when they lock it in. It does get updated annually in January throughout the state, so it could move a little. When I've seen it move in the past, it's usually been 1/10%.
Okay,
So it is possible it could move the needle more, but I wouldn't project that as a whole.
Yeah. it's a double-edged sword. The houses are getting valued at more and the state's using that number to
So
classify
you,
as
so you
wealthy.
mentioned a minute ago the 53%, but that's not true because you're gonna take away this. But you took away this, and you came up to the high 30s, low 40s. That would be of the total cost.
Yes.
That's, you made that,
Next slide.
you did that math for us. You say that again. and we'll-
I didn't like qualified. Yeah.
I watched the last video.
They're not final project costs, right? The building committee, after tonight, after they submit to the state, they first have to get that constructive feedback. They will tighten up the overall design. The site plans Chris showed you are kind of more cartoons at this point. We'll dial all that in. We'll actually do full measurements of the asphalt and the walls and anything we're doing outside of the building. We'll define the finishes inside the building, what type of equipment, what are the furniture, what's the desk, what are the floors made out of, durable long-term products versus, other types of products. All the decisions that the building committee will make, and is it a construction manager or a general contractor? General contractor lump sum low bid. If you're doing a pure building and it's kind of standalone, that's a more advantageous approach. When you're doing a renovation of an occupied building, you're assuming a partner would be better. And so the current costs that you're seeing here reflect construction manager delivery method. So they kind of come on, they help work with the school administration to develop the phasing that works best for the school versus more adversarial relationship.
And that's what we used for Clyde Brown in the police station, if I recall.
That's correct.
Yeah, police fire, yeah.
MSBA has not provided full guidance on the renovation spaces. And so, I told you I kind of picked that middle ground of the 2 percentage points for the bonuses. It could go up based on the options that are submitted. And then it's a reimbursement rate and the grant amount will be calculated on the final submission this fall. So as Chris showed on the ladder, when you're at the low end of the scale, you're doing less, you're getting less back in program, but you're paying less, right? And you're getting less longevity out of the building, right? So the higher you go in the scale, the more length you're getting out of your dollar and the longer you can go before you have to renovate again. And so that's important to consider as you look at the various options. So the drum roll
There you go.
for Ellen is the cost, right? And so we looked at these at various levels, right? And you'll see that on the left side of the chart, the renovations are in blue, the ad renos are in green, and the new building just happens to be in red. The estimated construction costs are there, so the renovations are in just the hard costs. That's just the construction cost itself, 53 to 62 million for that. As we talked about a few times, it comes with swing space. So there we're assuming that, we essentially need to take about 1/3 of the students and put them in modulars. So that's that $4.8 million number. That's all ineligible. So the MSBA would not participate in that $5 million. They would only participate in the construction costs that are eligible. So the total project cost, because you have a lower denominator, but some fixed costs in terms of furniture and other things you need to get into the building, has a little higher markup compared to the other two. Markup in this case is just short for the soft costs. We've done math to show kind of how we arrived at these project costs, but that project cost is the soft cost on top of the hard cost. And so the total estimate for the renovations range from, $76 to $87 million. The first two of those pure code renos, I don't foresee the MSBA participating in those besides the things that are at the end of their useful life, such as replacing your windows and doors and roofs and some other elements of the program. So you may end up in the, several $1 million, but it's not consistent with meeting your SOI and meeting your program. Renovation 3 starts to do that. As Chris showed you, we're starting to knock down some walls. We're starting to make some of the science rooms fit more spaces, but you're doing that within the existing building. So then you're losing those smaller rooms, you're losing any flexibility, and you can't deliver for the number of students you have today or the number of students that you have tomorrow. For those of you that are following at home, Clyde Brown was built for 515 kids, and there's how many there now?
614.
Right, so the kids are coming, right? And the MSBA recognizes that, right? And so that's why you have an enrollment growth projected in your high school, which is projected at 645 for this project. And so the renovations don't get you there. The ad renos start to get you there. And so AR5 and AR6, whether it's the science wing addition or the gymnasium and then the renovation of the old gym to be the science wings, get you the capacity of space. They address the science rooms, and they do renovate science rooms within the existing building by knocking down walls that then get to that point. So we do believe that the MSBA would participate in the AR5 and AR6 meeting their program. There may be elements of that that are ineligible, but we have to wait and submit to them to understand what that is. AR4, we believe, is at $98 million in terms of the hard construction cost. It's a kind of a standard soft cost addition of that, so it brings it up to about $127 million. That I project that based on what we understand with the MSBA's program and your program itself and how we're submitting that, essentially we get up to the high 30s and low 40% reimbursement, so 44 to 56 million. And what that means is when you look over on the right-hand side of the net cost to the town, once you take those reimbursements back from the AR5, AR6, and AR4A, you see that the range from AR5 and AR6 range from, 64 to $74 million that the town may pay. And the range of AR4A is 71 to $82 million that the town may pay for their portion of the share. The new building is $125 million for a construction cost, and frankly, that could be on the low end of the scale, depending on what you would do with the replacement fields. That assumes natural grass, that assumes just standard bleachers, not full bathroom facilities and full synthetic turfs and things like that. So that 165 million could grow to 170 million without batting an eye, 175, depending on how you guys fit out those turf facilities. But we kept it simple, trying to be in kind what you had for this exercise, and so that's 165 million. You start to hit all those caps, the MSBA won't reimburse for anything related to those athletic fields. You have a much longer duration when those fields will be offline, and longer duration for the overall construction project. So although you're getting more back from the MSBA, you'll see that the effective rate of that reimbursement drops to the low to mid 30s in terms of percentage. So the net impact to the town would be 103 to $112 million. I know that's a lot. So before I hand it over to Mike, do you want to take questions on that or let him wrap up?
Yeah. I'll just want to make a comment on that, because we're looking at the costs, obviously. Cost was a major driver in this. Like I said, we had a dozen, you had a dozen versions. I parachuted in at the end of the summer when you're down to just 7. But anyway, the cost for those work out to, they're very close. I mean, $1 million of borrowing for a capital project. And there's two kinds of debt, there's two kinds of overrides. There's a debt exclusion, which we're not going to ever talk about for a while. We've tried that twice, didn't work well. That's a permanent increase to your taxes. A debt exclusion is for a building, and we've done a lot of those. The library, the fire, the police, DPW wasn't, Clyde Brown was, this building was when it was done in 99, I think. But I think it's off the books now, or close to it. But that lasts only for 30 years. After 30 years, that money's paid off and it's gone. So it works out to $1 million on
That's
this.
what this would be.
That's what this would be. This would be a debt exclusion. And $1 million of borrowing works out to about $16 a year, just ballpark. I mean,
On an average person?
on an average house, a $607,000 appraised house is about $16 a year. So really, when you talk about the difference between, let's call the AR5 70 million, kind of split the difference, and AR4, call it, I don't know, 127, call it 76 million, kind of split the difference. You're not talking a lot of dollars between the lowest cost ad reno and the higher cost ad reno. It's, it's not a lot of money there. So we can talk about that a little bit more. We're talking value. Value is what we're looking for. We want something that's going to last 50 years, that we're not going to have to come back to, and it's going to meet all of our educational needs for the next 50 years. And the difference between the ones that won't meet our educational needs and the ones that will, I mean, if you look at R2, it's more expensive than the median of AR4. So really, there's value to be had in the AR4.
I mean, if you look at R1,
Yeah.
it's 72 million projected, and AR4A is 71.2 and up.
Yeah,
So it would make no sense
Right.
Yeah.
to just do a basic renovation and not get anything from it for
Yeah.
classroom space. Because the fact of the matter is the work has to happen.
Yeah.
We can't do nothing. It has to happen.
Yeah.
So if we have to spend 72 million, I'd much rather spend it on the addition renovation where you're actually going to be able to improve the building, not
Well,
just
you might-
patch it up.
You'd much rather spend 72 million for a 127 million building
Right.
than 72 million for a $72 million.
Right. Right. So, yeah, why don't we?
I mean, I'm not a
Yeah.
math person.
No, I'm with you. That's why I use the word value a lot. I like throwing that word around. There's value in some of these, and there's not value in a patch job. And the other piece is, the roof's gotta be fixed. It's gonna be fixed at some point in the next few years regardless. I didn't know it was raining inside. I thought we didn't have that problem with this building yet. Clyde Brown, I know we did. But if it's raining inside the building, we're gonna spend millions fixing the roof regardless, with this project or without this project. And not the nice thing, what Tri-County told me, MSBA won't reimburse for things that you've recently repaired. So they put a new boiler in at Tri-County. 5 years later, they're gonna tear the whole building down, junk the boiler and start over again. MSBA won't contribute for that boiler. The new boiler for the building, HVA system, I'm dating myself, but the HVA system for the building is not covered for the Tri-County because they just did it. Last thing I wanna do is put $72 million in this building over the next 8 years. And then 5 years down the road, have somebody else at this table and somebody else in that committee. Maybe you guys will still be at Veritech. But
Go for
go for a new building, go for another override to tear it down and replace it, because we won't get very much reimbursement at that point. It's silly, but anyway, we'll let you wrap up and then we'll have our
Right.
comments.
Well, I know it's kind of hard to follow cost because that seems to be the one most people are concerned about, but we did want to talk a little bit about our process and sort of our more qualitative evaluation of the options. In Vertex's approach to this, we like to look at different criteria to judge each of the options against so that we can do a comparative analysis. And so these are criteria. Some of them are standard, some of them we develop specifically with the town of Millis on things that are specific to the site, specific to the school operation, et cetera. So these were the 12 that the SBC decided on, educational program accommodation. So that's how well does each option facilitate the educational program. Cost obviously is the key driver, schedule duration, disruption to education during construction, disruption to education, to recreational fields, sustainability, swing space, parking, et cetera, permitting complexity, school future growth, district operations / busing logistics, and then construction impact to neighbors. So we took these criteria and we put them in our matrix, and across the top are the options, 7 options that we've presented tonight. And then the criteria are along the left-hand side. And then we like to use a almost stoplight approach. It's sort of 5 different levels ranging from most advantageous, which is the dark green, to advantageous, which is the red. The reason we like to use the color coding is because it usually provides us with a visual.
Can I just make one
Yeah.
comment?
Make it.
Real quick. This isn't intended to be read, okay? It's intended to be looked at. And there's a difference. If we try to go down and I can't read it, and I'm closer than the people in the back row. But you're looking for less red, more green. So that's kind of the way this is designed. It's.
Right, but
Yeah.
so Craig and I attended a lot of the SBC meetings. We've seen this slide before. I don't love this slide, not because of any reason other than it's squishy. There are some things here that don't matter, and it's red. There's nothing
Yeah.
about this slide that.
The intent of this is, and I understand it may not be for everybody, but the intent of this is really just to start conversation about specific topics that are important to the success of the project. And to compare them. So it's really, how do you compare 2 addition renovation options?
Right.
And which areas, there's not intended to be a quantitative
Yeah.
evaluation, it's more of a qualitative evaluation. And then, basically ranging from most advantageous to least advantageous and giving a range across them. Obviously, you know, a new building is gonna come out with a lot of green because it solves a lot of the problems, but the biggest one it doesn't solve is a cost issue. So, you know, that's why
So that should be all red.
it doesn't mean that everything, no, because,
Okay.
well, that, you know, the cost, the second row definitely is red, for that one.
Besides the fact that I don't think anybody can read this slide, but
Yeah.
maybe.
Well, this is
Well,
just.
again, as I said, the point is to look at it. If you see a lot of red, it's a less
Right.
favorable choice. A little green is good. Yeah.
Since it received.
Yeah.
So, obviously through that evaluation, the SBC came to the conclusion that, AR4A is the preferred option, which you see here, which is an addition. And then, one thing I don't think we touched on is there's also a partial demolition, of the wing, just to, the bottom left-hand corner, that, would happen, at the end of the project, once everything has been, fully constructed. So we went through that already in pretty good detail. Now, schedule. So, you can see here, the SBC chose to take a really long look during what we call the PSR, Preferred Schematic Report phase, which lasted from May and is culminating ultimately in a submission at the end of the month, should you approve. And so that's sort of the blue bar, that we took a little extra time, really did some evaluation and a few community forums to reach out to community members for feedback. And then now we're sort of on the bottom part of this. Sorry, it didn't all fit on one slide here.
You could have made it really small, that would have
Yeah,
fit.
that's right.
I know.
And unreadable.
Yeah.
We're in February of 2025, obviously, and this is one more step of getting approvals from the town to submit that preferred schematic report to the MSBA for their approval. That would be at the end of this month, should you agree with the SBC's recommendation. Then after that, there's what Jeff referred to previously, the FAS meeting or Facilities Assessment Subcommittee, where the project then goes before them, before it reaches the board. And there's some back and forth with the design team, our team and the superintendent. And then if all proceeds according to plan, the MSBA would approve that at their board meeting in April. The schematic design report is the next phase, and that's as we take that approved recommended option and develop it in more detail through schematic design. That's the green bar at the bottom. That would run, there'd be some overlap, which shows here, but that would run basically through the fall in preparation for a town funding vote at your November town meeting. Throughout that, the stars along the bottom, we would, and those aren't set in stone, but suggestions, we would reach out to the community, make sure questions are answered ahead of that vote in the fall. Obviously, trying to make sure everybody has a clear picture of what's going before them. Obviously, this is one of the biggest decisions that towns make in investing in their facilities. In the SD report, basically, that would run through approximately August, where it would be submitted to the MSBA, and the MSBA board vote would be at the end of October, and then the town funding vote in November, which would be both a town meeting and because it's a debt exclusion, would also need a vote at a special election.
And we would know the final, basically, contribution from the state, if not a signed contract at that point.
Correct.
In August, and then October, we get the signed contract?
Yes, we would move into the what they call their project funding agreement. Where they outline in great detail, or we outline in great detail for them and for you, everything we negotiate that is eligible. We obviously want you to get as much eligible cost reimbursed as possible. So we go through that in great detail. And then ultimately the MSBA votes to approve that. But the idea is to have, you know, it's not a final final cost, but it's, you know, a lot closer.
Close.
It's pretty much, you're committing to, a maximum grant.
Yeah.
From the MSBA. So it may be less depending on how things shake out during construction, but it's usually not far off.
Yeah, Clyde Brown was dead on. I mean, we're $2 million favorable actually from all the cost estimates. So
So you had a good OPM on that.
we did, we had one of the best. What happened to that company? It's the same OPM, right? Yeah. Same people, actually. Yeah, everybody was good, yeah. Can I just ask a question or two? Because there's been a lot of conversation going around about this. The clock runs out around November. I mean, this is not something that can be pushed a year from now, a year and a half from now. The state's got us on the list. This is the final bite at the apple, basically. Is that correct?
That's the idea, yes. Now, can't say that with any certainty. If something drastic were to happen and you said you needed, you know, to delay a little bit, then I think we would have to, depending on what the reasoning was behind that, we would bring that to the MSBA and they would decide how to proceed. But there is sort of a maximum period of getting through schematic design. And if you don't reach that, there is a potential that they could kick you out and you have to come back and apply again in another year.
That's how we ended up with the Clyde Brown, because somebody else couldn't make the deadline, so we got invited in at the last minute. So it does happen, and I know there is a time that it runs out. And because there's been a lot of conversation that this is open-ended, that we can have this open for the next 5 years while we investigate regionalization, while we investigate cost savings, while we look for a billionaire to donate the money to fund the school. I work for a nonprofit. We've been cultivating an honest to God billionaire, and it's 10 years in now. We're hoping to get a gift. But anyway, it's not as easy as people think. And we've looked at all those things. So holding it open, it's not going to be held open for another 5 years. That goes away. And if not November, sometime soon after that, the door will close and the door will not reopen without us reapplying. And have other towns reapplied after they've lost their
Yes.
slot?
Yes, including my town, right next door in Medfield. So we had a project that was voted down.
Yeah.
And we've just been invited back for a second shot at it.
How many years in between?
It's 5 years.
And it's gotten cheaper by waiting 5 years, right? No, it hasn't. Okay.
No, seriously.
Now, how much did it go up?
We don't know yet, that we're
Okay.
just getting started, but I would estimate it's 40 to 50%.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
inflation.
the post-COVID inflation boom of 2022 really hit the industry hard and continues to.
Yeah.
Construction costs have increased dramatically since 2022. And they're showing no signs of going down. They've stabilized, which is a good thing. We don't have the huge spikes that we were facing on a regular basis. But no, things in our business don't get cheaper over time.
No, they never do.
It's a good point to make as it relates to the cost slide too. So, I know, you want to always compare it back to Clyde Brown. To build Clyde Brown on this time frame we're talking about would cost twice what you built Clyde Brown for.
Wow.
And that's the truth. I mean, the elementary schools that are being built today are close to $100 million. And it's an astounding number.
Yeah.
Some of those are driven by some of the sustainability choices that some other towns are making,
Right.
that you guys are not making in terms of geothermal, but that only is the cream on the top of it, right? The cost of buildings has gone up, the codes have changed, you now need to be more energy efficient as a starting point. And so the cost to build a building is double what it was in 2018.
Okay. All right, so these are the next steps.
Yes, that last slide.
Yeah, this is the last slide on that. Was the last slide. More questions. So on January 22nd, the SBC voted to recommend AR4A. We're here tonight on February 5th, seeking the select board's vote to endorse the preferred option and the school committee. February 27th is our deadline to submit the PSR to the MSBA.
A hard deadline too. So.
And that's a hard deadline, yep. April 30th would be when the MSBA would vote to approve that. We would work through March and July, from March to July, and develop the schematic design level, and then we would do cost estimating ahead of the fall. And then throughout June and August, and then I think probably will bleed into the fall too, since summer is tough to get people's attention sometimes.
Yeah.
Community forums and various board presentations throughout town, seeking opportunities to communicate about the project, make sure people understand all the implications of this very important decision for the community. And then October 29th is the MSBA board vote and budget agreement. What they call project scope and budget agreement. And then November would be the town ballot and the town meeting to seek approval from constituents.
And if we miss that February
Yeah, the hard
27th,
date.
the hard date, that pushes us past November for everything
Yeah,
else.
so
Yeah.
you miss it by an inch, you miss it by a mile, so it's a 2-month delay. So
Okay.
they do take applications every 2 months. If you don't hit it by February, it would be a 2-month delay,
Okay.
and then your town meeting would then shift from November to January.
Yeah, that would have to be a special, not just a normally scheduled town meeting. And this needs to be done, I believe, at a normally scheduled town meeting, not at a special. So.
You can do it.
Really?
Well, no, you can do it either way, but I wouldn't run a special in January
Yeah.
for this because it's,
Excuse everything.
it does. It's not, I think that this needs to be a regular meeting that people, well, let's be honest, there's 12 of us that know when town meetings fall, but the 12 of us that do know that, we don't want to be playing games, putting it in
Right.
January when it's a bad winter, all those things. We want to make this transparent, above board and
Right,
clean.
and,
Yeah.
yes,
Well said.
okay. So,
That concludes our presentation.
Okay, just a couple of,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
we wanted to talk about, so we want to try to address the questions that we see coming up. People tap me on the shoulder, they send me my social media. One of the questions was the difference between an override and a debt exclusion, which you explained. They're both, say it again.
Okay, an override is anything that raises the property tax rate. There's two types of overrides. There's a debt exclusion, which is a limited lifespan that relate to the project. So a fire truck would be 5 years, a building would be 30 years. At the end of that, the taxes go back down.
Right,
For instance, the library, we're 11 years into it. We've paid off a third of the library so far. It's a 30-year borrow. We paid off just over a third.
so they're both, listen, I just learned this. God love it, whatever. They're both overrides.
Yes.
They both affect your taxes. But one has a, And-
Temporary and one permanent.
Until the
Right.
project is paid off.
Right.
right,
Like a mortgage.
like a
It's a
mortgage.
mortgage. It's a mortgage.
Exactly like a mortgage, okay. And then the next
Better
thing,
rates.
right, the next thing we wanted to explain was the impact to our taxes, we're all in this
Yeah.
together, for the different things, levels here. The ones that I wanted to do was, in my view, I could be wrong, correct me, you will. There are 3 options I'd like to know the impact on. One would be, Craig calls it do nothing, but there is no do nothing. Something has to be done. Because the building, as we learned, they did an assessment of the building as is. It's out there. You can look at it. It needs a new roof, it needs new windows, everything's leaking. It needs upgrades to the HVAC system, which probably needs electrical. And that's gonna trip some code stuff. So there's the do nothing, where one of the options was the 50.
R1, pretty much.
R1, which was how many million?
72.
72 million. Then there's the do nothing, that's not an option. It's the do nothing where we just patch. This year, maybe we'll do the roof. Next year, maybe we'll do the windows. The next year we'll do whatever it is. It's probably 10 million a year for 10 years, 8 years. And then there's the one that the SBC picked, the ad reno, 4A, 4A, 4R, 4A. I'd like to know what the tax impact, I know it's not perfect because you're certainly not gonna know what a patch fix over 10 years is going to cost, because we don't know what a roof's gonna cost in 3 years, never mind 5, or we can't wait that long, but you know what I mean. So we have some numbers.
Yeah, so using some, and again, this is approximate. I'm using the word approximate a lot. We don't know how much the whole building is going to cost. We don't know the whole reimbursement rate. There's a lot of things we don't know. But using what we do have, the full reno, the
AR4A or
yeah,
whatever.
thank you, is I took the median, it was like 127 million in the middle of those numbers that you showed, the range. If MSBA pays 40%, and again, I took a number in the middle, you said high 30s, low 40s, 40 seems like an easy number to work with. And then I played at 3.5% interest rate, just because who knows what interest rates will be, but that's not out of line. Tri-County just financed at a short-term borrowing at 3.8, 3.9 in that short term. So a long-term borrowing might be a little lower than that. That was a great rate. So they did good on that short term. So those are all assumptions. A house in Millis costs $605,000. That's the average median household. So I'll give it to you two ways. The median household on those numbers is about $1,200 to $1,300 per year in taxes. About. We're gonna get a lot more detail after we submit this. We'll be able to figure it out.
Now, obviously, if you have a 1.2 million home, it's
It's
gonna
going
be
to cost
between
you-
24 and 2,600. We can
Yeah.
all do that.
Yeah.
Even an idiot like me in math
Yeah.
can do that ratio.
Right, so there's that, so I'll use the median, but we'll give a lot more detail as we come
Yep.
into November.
Yeah.
If we do the 72 million all at once for the ad reno, with the, for the straight renovation, just the repair one, with the state paying nothing, that works out,
Close, right?
that works out to about $1,000 per household. So for $200 to $300 a year for the average household, you get a building that's gonna last you 50 years. 50 years, you know, not a building that's gonna last 20 years.
No, it's the other way around.
Well, one,
The ad reno,
the ad reno is $1,000. I'm sorry,
No.
it's $1,200.
right,
The straight
The
repair
straight
is
repair.
$1,000.
right. So the straight repair, the 70 million building
Yeah,
that is worth 70 million, you're saving 200
yeah,
on a 120 million building that's costing you 70 million. Does everybody get that?
Yeah.
It's a little weird.
that's how we're talking about. it
Somebody's
here.
nodding.
Yeah,
Because of the state's contribution.
because of
Yeah.
the state's contribution.
Yeah, you're talking a $200 difference for a 120 million building versus a 70 million building,
Yeah,
correct?
pretty much per year on taxes. Yeah,
Okay.
very close
For
to
a
that.
$600.
And we'll get the exact
600
numbers exactly done, but it's not gonna be off by an order of magnitude. Maybe I'm off by
Right.
$25.
Right.
Yeah, but it's in the ballpark. Then you throw in R1, which is not the
No.
R1, just the repair. You're just gonna fix 8 million, 6 million, 10 million a year of what breaks. You're just gonna throw that out. It's gonna total about $72 million, but you're gonna do an override year after year after year after year. You're gonna do 8 overrides. So just shoot me now. I'm not doing 8 overrides on this building, but you need to do an override to fix the roof, an override to fix the windows, an override to fix the HVAC. Year after year after year,
And the
if you
que-
phase this.
But the question being, if the override doesn't pass,
Yeah,
you just don't fix the roof.
yeah,
You
right.
put a topple. I mean, I don't, I'm throwing this out there. I don't know what happens. I'm assuming if the override doesn't pass, we can't find $10 million.
Yeah.
We can barely find $10,000, but $10 million is not possible.
Yeah.
So it will be an override. It will be an ask every year for some fix, some patch
And
fix.
some years could be $2 million, other years are gonna be $10 million. It depends on what we're gonna fix that year. And then we have to worry about tripping the magic number, and you're in construction, I'm not.
Yeah,
I think if you do 33% of the building's value.
you need
It's
to,
30%.
30%, 30%
to
of the building
upgrade-
value, you have to upgrade everything.
and forget it.
Yeah,
You're
Yeah.
into,
then you're back at $72 million.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're more.
Yeah.
Now add inflation,
Yeah.
add the cost of construction.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, and so that's why I keep looking at it as a value proposition. We're getting a 50-year building, and this is gonna be as good as a new school.
Yes.
It's going to last as long, it's gonna meet our needs as well as a new school. So
Yes.
to me, it seems like the right choice.
So that was that piece. And I wanna add something. I got a little thing here I wanna say. I've been saying this all along, but I'm gonna say it again. In my purview, in my opinion, this is the last piece of the municipal puzzle in Millis. So, and I will tell you, it's the last piece of the municipal puzzle for the foreseeable future. Existing buildings are being maintained now. There's a planned scheduled maintenance for all of our buildings, new and old. So, we need to pay, that's whatever. Now, this board, along with the school committee, the school building committee, the finance committee, and the consultants here, who have classified as much as possible as they can in the reimbursement column. We all take this very seriously. This is the biggest, somebody said this is the biggest ask ever
Yes.
in the history of Millis.
Yeah.
We understand the impact that this is going to have on everybody, including us. If we didn't, we would do what every other town around us is doing, and that's tearing down the old and building a new one, because that's what they all do. Nobody else is renovating around us. They just don't, but we are. We renovated this town hall however many years ago instead of building a new one. We renovated the senior center when the override failed, and I know people are talking about that, but there's no plan in the foreseeable future of building a new senior center. We renovated the library for a lesser price. We renovated the fire station. A study determined that the train station warranted $1.5 million investment. We're doing it for a fraction of that cost. And for whatever reason, the DPW, when they decide they need more space, they just go build a shed. So we do everything we can in this town to consider the financial impact on every single resident of this town. We looked at regionalization, knowing it wouldn't help us for our immediate needs, but we looked at it anyway. We spoke with our state reps, imploring them to increase funding, not only for us, but for the Tri-County. We know it's coming. What's the Tri-County doing? They're building a new building. There's nothing we can do, but they're taking care of their population, student population. We're trying to take care of ours. No town does more with less than we do. That's who we are. And that is what we're doing here. Someone commented on a post that I put up that said that this renovation was happening. We're having this presentation tonight. This person happened to live in Westwood. They commented something like, why didn't Westwood do that? I didn't even know that was a thing to renovate. People don't renovate. So again, this is the final piece of the Millis puzzle. Renovate the middle high school to get another 50 years out of it, bring it up to code, separate the middle from the high, make it safe for today's world, and provide our students the best environment possible to accomplish their goals. So yes, our taxes are going to increase, whether we do nothing or we do this. The do nothing option may be less impactful in dollars and cents, maybe. It may be more impactful since no one can see the future. But it will be more uncertain, stressful, anxiety provoking, and uncertainty often is. It doesn't allow us to plan. Since there is no plan, it is a reactive process rather than proactive. Sure, we can map out the next 10 years, allocating repairs accordingly, but we cannot put costs on anything with certainty. So it seems to me that we have a simple choice here. Do you want to know what's coming so you can plan, or do you like surprises? I personally do not like surprises, but this is coming before us. This is the world we live in. This is the plan we've chosen. And that's the decision we need to make. The building has to be fixed. Do we want to do it with deliberation Or do we want to do it Band-Aid wise, slap shot and like I said, with surprises. That's my speech.
I just want to say that, I'd like everybody to consider that there is quite literally no way it is going to cost less to just fix this piecemeal. It's impossible. Over time, as everyone said, construction costs are gonna go up. If codes tripped, we're gonna have a ton of other stuff that we're gonna need to deal with. The cleanest, best, most cost-effective way to deal with this is to go with the plan that's being presented to us tonight, the ARA for A. I'm fully in support of this plan. Our students deserve it, our teachers deserve it, the town deserves it. We deserve to have these buildings that are, good for teaching, good for learning. And, I remember with Clyde Brown, there were similar arguments when that project came up about why aren't we just renovating it? Well, the cost to renovate that would have been the same cost to build what we built because of all the code issues and the compliance. And we find ourselves in a similar position with the school. So when it's gonna cost the same to put a Band-Aid on it as it is to give us the space and the facilities that we need, then I really think we need to do that.
Yeah, and I just want to say and Wayne is in the back, but Clyde Brown was not eligible for renovation because it was so, it had T111 siding. I remember Wayne just kept ranting about that on the side of it. That's not what you put on a building that's going to last you 50 years. That's why we had to tear it down. This building doesn't need to be torn down. And that's what the state's come to the conclusion of. That's what we've come to the conclusion of. So not tearing it down saves us a lot of money and a lot of hassles, honestly. So it's the better option. But everybody made a very good argument why we should do this. My concern is there's an undercurrent of experts out there that have not served on these committees. I found it insulting that our school committee chair, who has reached out and announced she reached out to other schools in our area to see if they wanted to regionalize, people doubt that she did it, doubt that she tried hard, doubt that she sold it to other towns. What are we going to sell? A town that voted twice no on overrides? Who wants to partner with us? Does Dover want to partner with us? Does Sherburne want to partner with us when we vote no on override twice? Medfield? We bring very little to the table. We are going to have to do this ourselves. If we keep talking about this regionalization as an option, it's going to be 10 years before we can do it. If we can manage to regionalize, we lose all this. And now we're going to be on the hook for who knows what, middle school and a high school for a regional district. I believe that Robin reached out to these districts. I believe she did all the work. She said she did it, and it's insulting that armchair quarterbacks are saying that she didn't do a good job doing it, or good enough job. That if only they had reached out to do it, they could have sold this project. This is the project for us. This is a project for Millis. This is a project that has to be done. It's insulting to say the school building committee didn't look at cost savings alternatives. As I've said repeatedly, there's nothing but cost saving alternatives looked at here, and they don't save us costs. There's the undercurrent that the state won't fund us. They said that about the Clyde Brown too, that the state's going to pull out at the last minute and not give us our money. Am I correct? It is a binding contract once we're done. And it's not subject to presidential funds being pulled away or state funds being pulled away. This money exists.
Funded from the sales tax. The 1 penny of every sales tax dollar goes back to this program. So it's a funded.
So the money will exist if this project's approved by the state. So those aren't risks. I'm trying to think the others. There's been a lot of people who really honestly can't afford a tax increase, and I respect that. I understand that and I respect that, but that doesn't mean that this project isn't needed. People say 1/3 of the homes in Millis have kids in it. That may be right. I mean, it seems like that's a reasonable number. But education isn't for my kids. I have no kids in that school. They did well there. They graduated from there, 3 of them. And public education is for the public, the rest of us. It's to produce educated citizens in an environment. So it's not whether you have a kid going or not going. This is a project that benefits society and Millis as a town, and I'll stop my rant.
Yes. I know you hear that all the time. I don't have any kids in the school. Well, good for you.
Yeah.
I don't have any kids in the school either, but I love this town and we are here to do what's right for the entire town. And so that's what we're going to do.
So we need a vote, I think. Any
Any
questions?
Any comments from the public? You're all here. Get up. Joyce, you're never, Loring. Get up.
I'm Lauren Barnes.
You worked.
I'm a product of public schools, public universities. My daughters went to Millis and they're doing great. I want to thank everybody who attended in whatever capacity and for all the people who have brought this to this. And what I would like to request is that today is the first day of all the days to follow up to the point when we literally cross the threshold into town meeting. That there is never between now and then a time when asking a question is too late or at the wrong time. I think for this to happen, that the door of conversation has been open tonight, must remain open, and that all the boards that are involved, I would ask how you engage the public, how you structure your meeting, how you allow questions, where you put information. These are going to make the difference. And when I walk into town meeting, I can still ask a question as I walk into town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Agreed. Anybody else?
O'Reilly, 258 Village Street, and I apologize because this is my first meeting for this, so this has probably been addressed before. And I don't mind if you want to shoot me because I'm asking a question that was
No,
addressed.
we just established we won't be doing it.
Not tonight, anyway.
Option 4A, was it considered to not tear down that back wing? Would it make more sense to add that addition and keep that wing for additional growth? And since we've already seen that Clyde Brown has more kids than it was designed for, would it be that much more expensive to keep that? I have no idea. I was just kind of curious in seeing that you're adding, but then that was the only one I saw that you were.
Can I just make one comment on that? Clyde Brown was designed with growth in mind. It started at 515 and it's grown. Now so we're getting larger, but yeah.
No, I was just
Yeah.
wondering if keeping that wing, is that wing in such bad shape that it wouldn't make sense to keep it?
That's a great question. So, we showed you the options that are the second stage of
Can you move the mic just 4 inches on the
schematic
pole?
report. So in the spring of last year, we did look at options that included saving that wing with various renovation scopes, as did the AR5A and AR6 tonight too as well. That wing is the smallest classroom sizes space-wise. Those ones are at 775, Chris, right? Yeah, so 775. So the state guidelines is they want classrooms between 900 and 1,000. That just kind of shows you that when we looked at that had the least value to retain. That was not part of the original building. That was actually the very first addition that was built on the original high school. So that was built at near the original building, but a little after that. And so that was done on scale, a small addition. And so therefore it's not the most valuable piece of the building to save.
It was a very thoughtful question, Nicole. Anybody else? Okey dokes. What do we got?
So I make a motion, I move to,
To approve, to approve for submittal.
Okay,
Do you know what this is called? AR 48612?
stop it.
By the time we get to town meeting, it won't have a.
Oh, will it?
an
Will it?
acronym associated.
It'll have a real name
Good.
at that point.
It'll just be the middle.
The one?
Yeah.
Good.
All right, I move to submit for approval Plan AR 4A for the addition renovation to the middle high school.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Now, do we have the school committee gonna, open a meeting and vote? How's that work?
Joint meeting, but it's obviously not that, so I'm not sure what's happening.
You can open your meeting if you want and. Oh, you don't have a quorum? Yeah. Or you can,
do here? Aren't you
No,
on?
we don't have three here tonight, but I thought we were having a joint meeting instead of just a select board meeting.
No, it was a select board with a
No.
school committee and SBC invited to it, is how it was posted.
Yeah,
Oh, that's not what we talked about at our last meeting last week, but whatever.
okay. So what's that mean?
So I just wanted to comment really quickly on I'm Robin, I'm the school committee chair. And don't just say the address too.
Sure.
8 Pines Road, and I just wanted to comment on your comment about the regionalization. I reached out to all of the districts that we touch physically, and which is King Philip, Dover Sherborne, Holliston, Medway, and Medfield. King Philip never responded back to us. And Dover Sherborne responded back saying, thank you, but no thank you. And Medfield and Medway and Holliston. And so we have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
For that. So, I really reached out to all these school committee people, and they said, not right now, thank you. This was very much out of left field for them, for us to come at them with this request. They were not prepared for that, so they were like, I can't even fathom thinking about this right now. Thank you very much. But out of this came us collaborating about special education. And so we have now met with them on several different instances to talk about how we can work together with special education cost savings and needs. And I believe the superintendent and the special ed coordinators between all the districts have met and are working on coordinating their different programs. Like different school districts have different specialized school programs depending on their demographic. And so we're trying to help each other. We might send a kid to like Ashland, or they might bring a kid to Millis based on the programs that we have, which will help save costs instead of going to private out of district schools. So that's what came about from this regionalization. So it wasn't actually this big sad story that no one wants to partner with us. We want to partner together, but just in a different aspect. So there is a bit of understanding with that.
That is awesome.
yeah, that's very good.
Which towns?
Which town?
All of, are you,
Yeah.
all of them?
The neighboring communities.
They're all interested in spec.
All of them?
Where we can.
Yeah, where we
I
can,
mean,
yeah.
it's-
I know, but still.
That's great though. Yeah.
If they can help us with out of district
Yep.
placements off the table, fantastic.
Yes,
We have a
it is.
So there's a Special Olympics that the different neighboring towns participate in together with special education students. And that's the core group of towns that have started these conversations because they already have a relationship through this program. We're not like excluding any other towns. That's just kind of how it kind of came to be. And not necessarily like abutting districts, but like Ashland and all. Okay.
That's great.
That being said, I'm gonna open a school committee meeting.
There you go.
I don't usually make this motion. Do I?
Karen can give you a copy of the one we have written. Oh, wait, we don't.
Again.
No, it's basically, yeah. Yeah, why don't they come up?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't need these guys anymore. Get out of here.
Would you like me to make the motion? So I'm not.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Yeah.
I get it. Can you speak into the,
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to
All right.
4A as presented by this review this evening
And you might want to submit to the MBT,
and
yeah,
submit to the MSBA.
yeah.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you.
unanimously.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Second.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Cannister.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn the school committee meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There we go.
Good job.
Okay, I move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to